Stephen Paul Jobs was born on February 24, 1955, in San Francisco, California. While he was growing up, he used to learn mechanical and craft works from his adopted father. By the time he was 10, Jobs was deeply involved in electronics and supported the engineers who lived in the neighborhood. Jobs had difficulty making friends with the children of his own age as he was willing to spend more time alone. However, Jobs was seen by his classmates as a socially awkward loner. When he was, at the age of 13, his interest was keen on electronic works. At that time Bill Fernandez, who was a fellow electronics hobbyist, eventually introduced Jobs to 18-year-old Steve Wozniak. Steve Jobs' biological father Abdul Fattah Janali, who was a Syrian migrant, born in 1931. He bore to a traditional Islam family, and his father was a wealthy landowner as well as self-made millionaire. Jobs' biological mother, Joanne Siebel, who was a Catholic of Swiss and German descent, lived in a farm in Wisconsin. Since they were very young and had not been married, they decided to adopt Steve to another family. Steve Jobs' adopted father, Paul Jobs, who grew up in a Calvinist family background, lived on a farm in Germantown, Wisconsin. They were poor, and Paul dropped out of the school at a young age, and he traveled around the Midwest, working as a mechanic at various places here during the 1930s. He eventually joined the U.S. Coast Guard as an engine room machinist and earned promotions due to being a good mechanic. Jobs' adoptive mother, Clara Hagopian, was born in New Jersey in 1924, and later moved to San Francisco. Earlier in her family traveled to the United States from Armenia as immigrants. Jobs had difficulty working in a traditional classroom in school. He tended to struggle with authority figures, frequently misbehaved and was suspended a few times. When Steve reached high school age, he told his parents that he wanted to enroll in Reed College, which was an expensive liberal arts college in Oregon. Even though the tuition fees were not afforded for the poor parents, however, they had promised Steve's biological parents that he would get a college education, so they relented. Steve spent only one semester at Reed College, then dropped out as he not interested in the subjects he studied. He was more interested in Eastern mysticism, fruitarian diets, and used marijuana. Further, he experimented LSD, which is a mind-altering drug where effects on feelings, awareness and altered thoughts while he was in college. Steve liked the hippie community, as he loved their music and culture. Once he moved to Oregon where met hippies and worked in an apple orchard for a few months to make money. When age 13, Jobs visited Bill Hewlett to get computer parts for an electronics project. Eventually, Bill offered a summer job to Steve and gave some electronic parts as well in 1968. Steve returned to California to look for a job, and he meets his old friend Steve Wozniak in mid-1973. In that time Steve Wozniak has designed his own version of the classic video game Pong, using the television in his home. After finishing it, Wozniak gave the Pong video game circuit board to Steve Jobs and he took it down to Atari Incorporated in California. The Atari company thought that Steve had built it and gave him a job as a technician. Jobs was living a simple life in a Los Gatos cabin, where he was reading spiritual books, listening to South Indian music and using a Japanese meditation pillow in early 1974. He used his wages earned in Atari and traveled to India with one of his college friends Daniel Kotke, to visit Neem Karoli Baba at his Kanchai ashram in order to search of spiritual enlightenment. Unfortunately, Neem Karoli Baba had died when they arrived in India. However, They made a long journey to meet Hardak and Babaji, who was teacher lived in an ashram where, Uttar Pradesh in India. After staying for 7 months, Jobs returned to the US with his friend. Jobs had changed his appearance, his head was shaved and he wore traditional Indian clothing. Wozniak and Jobs regularly attending meetings for a group of early computer hobbyists called the Homebrew Computer Club. It's starting to gain popularity after the Altair 8800 personal computer kit came out in 1975. The knowledge that Wozniak and Jobs gathered at the homebrew meetings, as well as his exceptional talent, allowed him to build his own computer board. Because Wozniak wanted a personal computer for himself, which was a stepping to the development and marketing of the first Apple computer. At that time, Steve Jobs understood that his friend's brilliant invention could be sold to software hobbyists, who wanted to write software without the hassle of assembling a computer kit. In 1976, Wozniak designed and developed the Apple I computer and showed it to Jobs, and he suggested that they could sell it. For that purpose, Jobs convinced Wozniak to start a company. Jobs, Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne founded Apple Computer in the garage of Jobs' Los Altos home on Crist Drive in April 1, 1976. Within a short time, Wayne left the company. Jobs and Wozniak became as the active primary co-founders of the company.